Hello and welcome back to Leaders Lane. I'm your host, Monica Cade, and today we're exploring what it truly means to lead with love. My guest is Genevieve Peturo, who went from TV marketing VP, measuring success by ratings and dollar signs, to founding Pajama Program, all because of a simple question from a 6-year-old girl in an emergency shelter. 23 years later, her organization has delivered over 8 million pajamas and books to children in need. Genevieve is an award-winning author of Purpose, Passion and Pajamas and has shared her story on Oprah, The Today Show and stages across America. Today, she's here to discuss the 4 truths about leading with love, which will transform the way that you show up in the world. And I think it is something that we so need in the world today. So, Genevieve, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Monica.
I thought before we jump into talking about love and leading with love and what that looks like and means, could you give our listeners a little bit of context of your backstory? Came from a big marketing career, and what was that transition process like for you?
Sure, I can. Yes, I worked in the television business in New York for over 12 years because I always wanted to be Mary Tyler Moore. I wanted to be a TV producer or in that sort of field, and I was. I was in marketing for a television syndication company, and I was living my dream, or so I thought, climbing the corporate ladder, and I loved it. It was it was the business world that I thought it would be, and it was mostly male driven at the top and very few women in TV at the time. And I was making my way through and learning how to be a boss. And, I had bosses, and my father had bosses, and that's what I accepted, and that's what I knew. So I was excited, thinking I found my dream. And one afternoon, I heard this voice in me ask, if this is the next 30 years of your life, is this enough? And I was shocked. What I realized was that my family, my parents, my father came from Italy, off the boat, literally. They'd always expected me to get married and have kids, my whole life. And then they saw me sort of reject that and want to be in the business world, single and independent and leave home. And I didn't really have that desire to just be a housewife or to just be a mom. And I realized 12 years working in the business world that if in 30 years I continued, I would be alone. And maybe there was something I missed. All those times they asked me, are you sure? Are you sure? And I just thought, let me think about, what I could be in 30 years if I was still doing this. And as I was really giving it thought, it was really, really turning my life upside down, just the thinking of maybe I had made a mistake. I remembered seeing a spot on the news about children being hurt in the home they were supposed to be taken care of. And I thought maybe I could read in the shelters, reach children, and in that way, feel like I was nurturing children and maybe get a little of that love that my mom, gave us. I could give it. And I went and I did read to these children in shelters, and I fell in love with them. Just fell in love with them. They had been in such harm's way, and they were so traumatized. And they were sleeping in their clothes there, and it was safe, and it was an emergency shelter, and especially the first night, they didn't have anything. And I brought pajamas. I read to the children, and I gave pajamas one night. And a little girl was so afraid of me. She didn't want to take anything. And when I finally calmed her down a little bit, she asked me, what are pajamas? And that was it. When she asked me that, everything that I thought I wanted fell away. And I just wanted to be with these children. And I just kept bringing pajamas. And when I finally had the nerve to tell people what I was doing and actually say, this is what I want to do with my life, and I don't want to climb the corporate ladder anymore. It was both this wide awake moment for me and also terrifying. And I leave my job and made a whole mess of my life, but I wanted to meet these kids, and thankfully it worked out.
I got goosebumps listening to you, and I'm sure you've shared that story so many times, but I could just feel that experience of what it would have been like for that little girl as well, It's they're so pure children as well. And sometimes they really open our eyes to a bigger, a bigger experience of life. So I'm curious, you did say, you touched on saying how you were turning your world upside down, because I was thinking, oh my God, if that was me in that position, I think I would be terrified about the thinking part of it. It's like, oh my God, I made a mistake, and how do I move forward? What was the messy middle bit like? How long was that transition period for you to go from one thing to another?
Yes, it was messy. It was messy. I didn't handle it well. So I don't mind talking about it because I always want to tell the good with the bad.
Mm,
Well, I didn't. I was running on my emotions, which was very strange because, in the business world, you didn't. You did what was smart and you thought about it over and over. And all I could think about was, I have to get to these kids. I have to get to these kids. And I had a mortgage and everything. And I was just lying to my bosses about where I was, where I was going. It just financially came, started to unravel because I didn't tell anyone where I was sneaking off to and what I was doing and what I wanted to do. I was juggling and dropping all these balls, but all I wanted to do was go shopping, used all my credit cards for everything I could to buy the pajamas, to get to the kids, to ship them. And when I finally told a girlfriend, in confidence what I was doing, instead of thinking it was a great idea or wanting to help, she just scared me by telling me, do you remember you have a mortgage? What do you think you're going to do? How are you going to pay your bills? You're by yourself. And she was right. I didn't know what to do and I didn't know what I was doing. It was very scary, but I just couldn't stop. I
mm.
couldn't turn my back on them.
Do you feel like before this point, because you heard the voice and so you were really listening to your intuition at that point, do you feel like before this point you used to operate on intuition as well, or do you feel like you were more listening to your mind and your head driven?
I was mostly listening to my head. I mean, when that voice asked me if this is the next 30 years, is this enough? I wondered if I had ignored that voice, if there were other things that I had ignored and that was just, and it wasn't loud, but I thought maybe that was loud compared to the other little signals I had always gotten. Now, sure, there were things I'm sure up to that point that were intuitive that I did listen to, probably about in my corporate world too, but I didn't feel those things. I just thought that there were business instincts maybe. And this was so human and other human, sort of signals to me that I was following now. And it was definitely emotional. And I don't remember being that emotional. And I know I wasn't outwardly in the business world.
Hmm. Okay, so now our listeners are business owners and entrepreneurs and things like that. So I'm also curious, how did you make that leap? Because you've been in the corporate world. Did you have any previous sort of entrepreneurial experience to make that leap, or were you figuring it out as you went along?
No, I was figuring it out as I went along. It was easy to know what I wanted to do now
Hmm.
because I just did what I wanted to do, and that's
Yeah,
how we're supposed to live life.
yeah.
And what we want to do, we should be able to figure out how to also eat, stay safe, take care of ourselves. But it was such a drastic difference. I didn't have any way to know how or what I could do to take care of myself. I just saw this taking care of the children piece. So I did learn, but the number one thing I tell people, which I didn't do, was to share that with people, to ask for help, to say, look for people who might have been doing this, working in being as a caregiver. People were, working in foster care. There were jobs in those fields, but I was so afraid that what people would say was, what are you, crazy? You didn't prepare. You didn't even know. So I had to figure out that this could be a 501(c)(3) organization where
Mm.
we give pajamas and books to children.
Yeah. It's an incredible journey. Did you also have any mentors along the way? Like, as you know, you started along your path and you started figuring it out. Did you find mentors or anyone that really was supportive or instrumental into helping you build it into an organization?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. When I realized that this could be an entity and that there were people who wanted to help, I reached out to a couple of the people that took care of these children I was visiting. There was one who was a nun and she took care of children in Queens, New York. And I asked her for some help. Could this be a thing? And she said, yes, it can be a thing. I reached out to a woman in New York who worked and was an executive director of Dress for Success. A little different, but she had a paying job helping women who were some of the moms of these children I was taking care of, who were having a second chance in life. And she helped me along the way too. So I don't know what I would have done if it were just me. And if I didn't become brave enough to ask for help. Thankfully I did.
It's interesting because I feel like asking for help can be a really difficult thing for people. And it's not necessarily in the business world, it might just be in everyday life. Sometimes we've had this feeling of like, oh, I've got to do it on my own, or I can do it better, so I'll do it on my own. What was the transition point for you in learning to ask for that help?
Very difficult, very, very difficult. I didn't even tell anyone what I was doing. And I remember when I started to tell people after the friend of mine really shot down my idea, it took me a while to open up again. But when I did, I was very matter of fact at first. I said, this is, you can give me some pajamas and books. I'm going to the shelters. I'm reading to children and they don't have pajamas. If you could give me some, that would be great. That's how I said it, right? And it wasn't very effective. I guess I was tired. It was the first time I was talking to a woman who did bring me some pajamas and books. And I just started blurting out the situation of what I saw when I went to the shelters and about the little girl. And I started to just get emotional and teary eyed. And then I started to cry. And I was so embarrassed. And to me, that was unprofessional. And I said, oh, now I'm making it worse. And she leaned in and she hugged me. And we connected and I said, I was shocked. And she felt that. And she said, what else can I do? And that was the moment that it went from, I shouldn't have done that. It was a mistake to let my emotions get the best of me, to, wow, somebody wants to help this. I'm not alone in this.
That's so beautiful. I know I'm one of those sensitive people, and I've had challenges over my life to, not contain, but manage my emotions.
Mhm.
Um, and I think like growing up, it was even like in society, you're told it's like, don't cry about stuff, be strong and all this. But it's interesting. I think there's a place for both. And I think even now in the world, we're seeing this shift of helping people feel their emotions. It doesn't mean go out there and throw them around, but you can still feel them and not be afraid of them and use them to support you move forward.
And finally, when I told the man that I was with, because, he didn't know what I was going to do. And I said, I think I have to do this. I really do. And I was afraid of what he'd say. And he said, I think you should go for it. So that sealed the deal.
I love that. That's such a nice, warm, fuzzy feeling. It's so important, and I'd love to know your thought on this too. There are people that say if you've got an idea or you're building something or you've got this dream, don't tell people. And then I've also read there's lots of people that are like, tell everyone. What are your thoughts on that?
Tell everyone. The human connection is our best tool. I think the time right now we're in, that's so important. So important. We've all come through several years of the pandemic. We're still getting our lives back in the direction we want to go. And a lot of that was contemplating, am I going in the right direction? And I think we need each other more than ever. And I think we have to bond. And I think when we take a chance on each other, we shouldn't be surprised, but we're surprised at the support. And it's only shown up for me. And I know it shows up for people because I coach people, I consult, and I do a lot of encouraging people to reach out and share and ask for help and ask questions. It's always
Yeah.
working out. So I think that that's the best way to go.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love the phrase, it's always working out. It's so easy to sometimes focus on what's not working out,
Hmm.
according to our perception as well, and how much of later in hindsight you sort of get to see that often it is working out, but you don't necessarily see the forward vision at that point in time.
Right. Right.
So let's talk about love. You are teaching people and talking and speaking on leading with love. So, what inspired this concept?
Well, I think business is has been cold. It has been run by bosses for many of us. And that's a one-way street. When I used to go to work, get summoned into a meeting, there was a group meeting, we sit at the table, one person would talk and give out assignments. And we would just nod. And I was always very nervous. And I know everybody else was pretty nervous too. And part of it, yes, I was young, but I saw people of all ages, nervous when the boss was asking questions and all of that. And it wasn't a fun, collaborative day. It was mostly you get your work done, and that was called work. So when I started Pajama Program, I didn't do that naturally. I didn't know what I was doing. That was part of it. So I needed help. And so I would ask, volunteers at first, how do you think we should go about doing this? And it just opened this whole new world. And I think that that's so important to share from the start, that this is my vision. You're interested in what we're doing here, and I'm interested in how you want to contribute to this. And I'll only really want to be interested if you're heart led, because now all I'm doing is listening to my heart with every decision. Now, yes, we have a head that's going to support the heart, but that's how it goes for me. The heart first and the head follows. The heart says what I want to do, and the head says, okay, let's figure out how to do this and get to the goal. But sort of the heart sets the goal. And I think listening to your heart voice is the number one thing that leaders need to do, more and more are doing, because that's the connecting piece. The heartstring is the connecting piece.
So, what do we do if for many, many years we haven't really been in tune with our heart voice? Because I believe it's always there. And it's just
Mm.
sometimes we're just not paying attention, or the noise, we're paying attention to thoughts in our mind.
Right,
So, for
right,
someone that maybe is like, yeah, I want to start leading more with my heart and making
right.
decisions in that way, what, how do you support people to get more in tune with that?
Well, it's like you said, it's always there. Usually we're raised to ignore our feelings about things because they are emotional and they don't belong in the decision making process. But I think everything is physical. You can make a decision, and it can feel like the right thing, it can feel like the wrong thing. And I think if we practice feeling how our bodies are talking to us, how they feel when we make a decision, we can even do that silently. We can say, okay, I have to make a decision. If I do this and say this to this person or to the team, does it feel right? Your body will tell you. Your body will tell you. Now, it takes a little while to try it, to feel your body. And it takes a little while to trust it. But I work with people all the time and just ask them, you can just say, my name is, and if your name is Monica, and say to you, say, my name is John, it's all wrong. It's wrong.
Yeah.
And if you say,
Yeah.
my name is Monica, it's right. Really, it's really easy if you practice listening to your body.
Have you found in your experience that people can feel it, but then they struggle with acting on what they feel?
Yes, it's hard at the beginning. It's hard.
Mm,
Sure, it's hard
yeah.
because we're not raised in our culture. Now maybe more people are, but I was not
Mm,
raised to listen to my head when it came to business. I was that way
yeah.
when, I was with family, and I was with, animals, that you listen to your heart, and you're you. But as I got older, and especially learning from bosses, they were not leading with their heart. And somebody told me once, point to yourself. We point to ourselves here. This is our heart. Nobody, this isn't me. This is me. We all do that. So
Yeah.
somehow invisibly we know.
Yeah. I love that example. That's very true. We can all relate to that one. I don't think I've ever met anyone that pointed to here. So,
Right.
because you've been doing this a while, do you feel like you're very quick to follow what's in your heart? And then obviously you use your head to make decisions and all of that. It's not one or the other, it's both.
Yes. Most of the time I'm true to myself. Not
Mm,
always. I still am
yeah.
learning. Sometimes there are new things that oftentimes you're taking a chance when you're listening to your heart because it's not a traditional way you're going to go. It was hard, at the beginning to walk away from a decision because I wasn't sure. And even though there might have been four people looking at me and thinking, we know what to do because they're using their head, I wasn't so sure that was the right way. And so it took courage, and I didn't always do it at first, to say, it doesn't feel right, so no decision right now. But we have to have the courage to say that if that's how we feel, or we have to have the courage to do something that's not what everybody thinks is the right way to do it, especially when you don't have that relationship with the group yet or with the person yet.
Yeah. Yeah, that can be so challenging. And even whether it's in a business setting or even a family setting or a
Hmm.
social setting, sometimes you have those relationships and you don't necessarily maybe want to go against the grain, but sometimes you feel things so strongly. And the other part is when you're following your heart, I like to talk about it in this way, is that only you can see that and only you can see your vision and dream from the inside. You can share that with people, but just because other people around you can't see it, it's often because it's for you to express it.
Yes, and
Yeah.
so many times it's so easy to include others in your decision making, and we think it's our decision and that we have to make the decision, otherwise we'll look weak. And that's not the case. It's okay to say, I don't know what to do. What do you think? Or I need some ideas. Or how do you feel about this, what we're doing? Do you think you could do it any better? Or are you participating the way you want to? Is there something going on in your life? Are you okay? I mean, we're luckily getting a little more personal these days because of what we went through. People are had a very hard time, and we learned that we can grow closer if we know what's going on. So that was also forbidden in the corporate world. You couldn't know what was going on in anyone's lives, but it affects us. It affects us when we are working. It affects the
Yeah.
relationships. It affects things, and it puts an obstacle, this big wall between us. And there's a line that you can cross a little bit, as long as it's okay between people, because there's that support we need from each other as humans, that human connection.
Hmm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's such a powerful aspect of life. I noticed it as well when during COVID in particular, because for my work, I'm a writer. So that naturally is a very isolating sort of experience. You don't necessarily work with a lot of people around you. And then, being in lockdowns and different things like that and not seeing family, that's when I really noticed how much connection, even if it's those brief moments or going outside, connecting with a stranger at the supermarket or something like that. It's like those little touch points actually contribute to our well-being and our creativity and our general outlook on life.
It's so true, and it's so isolating when you're working with people physically now, and nobody knows what's going on with you. It's just, you feel alone. You can't contribute. You can't talk about something that might be happening in your life. No one can support you because you're not supposed to talk about it. And nobody can ask you, and everybody's becomes a robot just to get through. That's not what we were. Not robots.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly right. So let's talk about the four truths because that's part of what you speak on when we're talking about leading with love. So, how did you come to the four truths?
It's a good question. It's a good question. I was writing. I write too, and I kept going back to these these 4 topics I would write about. And I said, I think that that's really leading with love. The first is listen to your heart voice. I said, okay, I get that. I did that. That was a good leading with love moment. And I continue believing in that philosophy. Then I thought it has so much to do with the human connection. It's everything. I could never have grown Pajama Program past, me if I didn't open up and let people in and invite people to the table and not make every decision by myself because I was the boss, but to, let other people make decisions. And some of them were better than mine. And that human connection, we were all sharing a purpose and sharing a vision that, became now is something that we all want at work. So it was listening to your heart voice and then letting other people in, the human connection. And then it was leading with integrity, with purpose outside of yourself, and not thinking that, I want to make money, I want to be the be all and end all, and I want to make the rules, and this is my impact on the world. It's service. It's choosing what you're doing because you love it, and you can do anything because if you love something, that's sharing it, and that's bringing beauty and an impact to other people and making their lives better. And so that's the case with anyone who lives with integrity outside of him or herself, to do anything because you want to share your gift. The purpose is your gift, and it does enrich other people's lives, and that's what is so fulfilling, and that's what keeps us going when we hit obstacles. And then the last one, people used to say, look at what you did. Look at the power of one. It just takes one person. And it never felt right. I felt like I'm not all by myself in this. And I uttered, it's not the power of one that changes things. It's the power of one another that moves mountains and moves people. And I would say, we have to move a lot of people. We need a lot of pajamas and we need a lot of books because there are a lot of people, little ones, that need help. So I just said, okay, if I put this down, it's listen to your heart voice. The human connection is our greatest tool. Live with integrity outside of yourself. And remember, it's not the power of one, it's the power of one another. That's the secret. So I just said that leads to a really thoughtful life. That leads to a life that contributes and a life that gives us meaning.
It's so true how when we're connected to our gift, no matter what that is, and then we're using it, I've often found that infectious energy within us, or that delight or the joy of however we feel when we're expressing our gift, it's felt from other people. I just feel like, and it's there to be shared, and it's our responsibility when we know what our gift is to go out there and share it, because it touches people in ways that we don't always know. Like I could watch one of your Instagram reels and be completely transformed that day. And we've obviously had the pleasure of connecting now, but say we hadn't, you would never know that, but you've changed my day or changed my outlook and my life just because you showed up to express your gift. So what are your thoughts about people who are struggling to find their gift, or they feel like they don't have a gift? What would you say to them?
I think and I do this exercise with people, it's on my website if anybody wants to try the exercise to find your purpose. I think too many times people know what they want to do and they're afraid, or they don't see how it can keep them afloat, or they're afraid to make a switch. Because so many of us now, so many people want to make a change because we didn't grow up thinking, I have a purpose. Let me find my purpose, and that's how I'll make my way in the world. So I think if people are doctors or accountants and maybe want to be teachers or maybe veterinarians because they really love animals, I think it's sad to keep that dream, that purpose that on the back burner. So first be brave enough to know if something's missing in your life and to recognize if you have chosen not to pursue it because you didn't know how, or what would people say. That's a big one. What will people say? And then to start to research what you want to do, immerse yourself in it, even if it's just an hour a week researching it by yourself. Just slide it into your life a little bit and see maybe if there is a way that you didn't know it. Talk to people. There are so many people now talking about purpose. There are so many people doing what they want, and so many people have jumped from one to another, whether it's off the corporate ladder or sideways, because they realize this is a long life and not a fulfilling one if you followed in somebody else's direction or you took a path that was easy. There are so many more ways now to live your purpose and not be ashamed or embarrassed that you didn't know it before.
Do you think that living your purpose has to be tied to career? Or can it be something, where someone still is in a career that they find enjoyable, but maybe their purpose is being expressed through something that isn't to do with their job?
Yes, I always say, if you at least slide your purpose, if you want to sing, if you want to dance, if you even want to work with a nonprofit and you don't know how to make money and you have bills, yes, just don't leave it on the back burner. Slide it in. Slide it in, and you will know if this is enough for you. And if it's enough for you, bravo, well done. You are sharing that gift, and that's wonderful. And for some people, it's perfect. And for some people, they decide they want to pursue it, and maybe when they retire, or maybe they take that jump.
And so many people are taking that jump. I noticed as well with the introduction of AI into the world, my work is shifting and it's causing me to dig deeper to really, similar to you and your initial process of like listening to that inner voice and getting clear again. And it's funny how sometimes when the outside doesn't seem to be working, it's like that's when you go in and you discover things that maybe you might be doing something for a long time and then you pivot a different direction, or you're doing the same thing but it evolves because of the times that we're living in. You talked about fear before. How do we not buy into the fear?
For a lot of us, it's been there for a very long time. So it's not always easy, but you have to take a chance on trusting someone else with your dream to share it at least. And sometimes it's a stranger. And I mean, when I started, well, after a while of running Pajama program, I'd have somebody come in my office and close the door behind them. And at first I didn't know what was going on, but I learned. I sat down, and that's when they wanted to tell me they were really an accountant and they wanted to be a veterinarian, and they were 40 years old, and they trusted me because I had done that and I had made it clear and shared that. So it's not always easy. You just need the first supportive person who will be there, because there are hard conversations for some people to have when they're going to make that change. Their family members, they feel their colleagues are going to, not understand. And a lot of times they're right. There are hard conversations to have, but how do you want to live?
Yeah, that's a mic drop moment just there. Yeah, it is. I don't know about you, but I know as I get older and I sort of start looking at my life differently. And I think time is so limited. We all don't know how long we have. And it's like, I often like to check in and ask myself, if I'm unsure about a decision, I ask myself, how would I feel if I didn't do this? And sometimes the answer is, I wouldn't mind. And that gives me the freedom to let that thing go and then keep going. But sometimes, especially when I'm unsure about the decision, like, do I do it? Do I not? And then when I ask myself that question, it's like I get this resounding, like, I would feel like I sold my soul, or I would feel like I just gave a piece of myself away for not doing this. It helps me to move forward despite what the thoughts that like to create fear or want to detract us from moving forward with that thing that we love.
Right, right. And I speak a lot, and I put that big question up on the slide. If this is the next 30 years of your life, is this enough? And I see the phone cameras going off, because that's a question that affected me in such a strong way. And it affects people when they look at those words, that question. How do you answer that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a beautiful question. So our interview is coming to a close, but is there anything else that you'd love to share with our audience that I haven't maybe touched on just yet?
I'd say take a chance on yourself. Bring that whatever hidden passion, whatever you put on the back burner, bring it up, at least in some way, and find a way to be in that world for even an hour a week. It will change everything. And the more people that see and feel how different you are, you will be supported, because people are going to say, what's going on? You really love that, that whatever you're researching, you really love going to volunteer there. You really love learning more about numbers. I know somebody who just wanted to be an accountant. They said, I always was great with numbers, but I thought it would be a boring job. And I met this guy, and he's having so much fun helping people, even with taxes. And to me, that's not my thing, but it lights people up, because I can see that, because I'm not good with numbers. So I can see how that gift, because it was a gift to work with somebody who was good with numbers, how that can help you realize, I'm really good at this. I can help somebody who's petrified, of numbers, and it comes naturally to me. And instead I went to follow my dad and, his profession, but, making a change at 50, why not?
I love it. I love that you're bringing that question to the world and supporting anyone on their journey at any point, whether, they want to make a change now, or they just want to adopt like something that they're passionate about, like you said, for an hour a day.
Mm-hmm.
Take that pressure off it. Because I think sometimes we can think, oh, well, if I'm going to pursue my purpose, then I have to turn it into this big thing, and it's got to become a business, and then it's got to be, this whole hoorah. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm just saying that it can start small, and it can be just something you do for yourself because it brings you joy, and it can evolve after that.
Not everybody can sing like Adele, but everybody can take lessons and get better and enjoy that hour a week with somebody who's a vocal coach and feel like they are Adele for an hour a week.
Totally. Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Now, before I let you go, I have a segment at the end of the show called the Leaders Lane Sprint. And it's just 4 quick fire questions, go with your heart. So my first question is, what's one of the best experiences you've had in your life?
One of the best experiences. Wow. Every year celebrating Pajama program is a big deal. That brings me so much joy that it's thriving.
Yeah.
And my wedding anniversary, 2 anniversaries.
I love that. And what's one thing that you would love to do in your life that you haven't yet before you die?
Go to Greece.
Okay. And what's one thing that brings out your best?
Wow. Sharing a story, any of my stories, with somebody who is brave enough to tell me they want to make a change, and they are already immersed in one career and are brave enough to open the conversation. I love sharing the ups and downs, because I see they need an ear, non-judgmental ear. And I like knowing I can be that.
That's so beautiful. And my final question for you is, what did you enjoy most about our conversation?
What did I enjoy most about the conversation? I think sharing that we both changed since purpose has become a key word in lives because of some very, very difficult time, still close enough to the pandemic to know the lessons that have come from them, and to heed those lessons, and to talk about where we've and what's still missing. And the human connection is so important. And I think that's one of the lessons we touched on, that we need to embrace the human connection now.
Yeah, it was such a beautiful chat, and I can already feel little things brewing, and in all my ponderings that I've been doing of late. So it's been a delightful conversation for me personally, but I'm sure that our listeners as well would have lots of little things that they can take away and hopefully connect them back to their heart voice.
Oh, thank you. I loved our conversation, and I hope someone out there will now be a little bolder.
Yes, definitely. Well, thank you again, Genevieve. It's been a true delight.
Thank you.